Vantage Capital has provided $20 million of funding to Landmark Africa, on Nigeria's leading property developers. And joining earlier, CNBC Africa's Didi Akinyelore discussed Landmark Africa's potential with the CEO, Paul Onwuanibe.
This transaction took place about a week ago. We've been in conversations for quite some time, and obviously the market is not as great as one would have expected it, so it took a little bit more time sort of dotting the I's and crossing the T's. In terms of significance, the funding is for two things. One is for certain refinancing packages that we need to put together, and then the second is for growth. So in terms of significance, it's the right time in the property business. The right time to grow is when the economy is not doing that well. That's the right time to build and produce.
Let's talk a little bit more about the plans for growth. Obviously, you mentioned there that a part of those funds will be used for expansion. In what way will you be expanding your business?
They've got a series of sites in different places, and one of the things we're going to do is build units on those different sites. And when I say units, I mean three different things. So some offices, because we're a mixed-use developer, so some offices, some retail, and some residential, and a hotel. So this gives us the legs for the next phase of our development. Yes.
Now, we see that you plan to reach a $5 billion valuation market. So how will this aid towards that goal? And also, I guess you could tell us how profitable your business is here in Africa.
To get a $5 billion valuation is literally it comes from a revenue stream. Yeah. So to get a $5 billion valuation, depends on what sort of cap rates you want to use. You basically need to produce sort of $500 million in revenue. So what this is going to do is going to build real estate that we're going to rent out to produce some revenue, which hopefully over the next 5 years will produce those sort of revenues which will give us that valuation.
Let's talk about the portfolio that you have right now. We know, of course, you have the Landmark Village. Hard Rock Cafe just recently opened. There's, of course, a new event center that you've just recently built. There's a restaurant, I believe. So tell us a little bit about Landmark Village, first of all.
Okay, so Landmark Village is a mixed-use development. So it's about 400 linear meters of waterfront. It's on the side of Victoria Island where Onwuanibe Beach is. And it involves 5 towers, multi-story offices, multi-story residential apartments, a hotel, and some retail. As you see, the Hard Rock is operating there, the event center is operating there, our corporate offices are there. And over the next couple of years, you will see a couple of 20-floor buildings spring up.
And tell us, what is the key to your success in Nigeria, perhaps Africa as a whole as well, especially given that we're in a very difficult business environment right now?
Well, if you've heard me before, I'm a firm believer of the demographic dividend due to come. So in Africa as a whole, Nigeria specifically, it's a numbers game. And because we're in property, I feel very comfortable with the fact that people will have to live, work, play somewhere, and we want to be that destination.
And what are your concerns in regards to the business environment? Because obviously a lot of businesses are finding it tough right now. All sorts of businesses.
Our tenants pay in naira, so we raise money at the official rate. We have to pay back at the official rate, but our tenants pay us in naira, which we have to convert at the parallel rate, so automatically there's a 30% loss there. So the exchange rate mechanism needs to be sorted out for property to thrive in this country. Okay, sorry, that's one. 2 is the regulatory environment. It just takes too long and it's too opaque to develop your property, to produce your property. So if you're a virgin developer, say, you come into this country or this city, you need to understand how to get your building control, how to get your planning permission, how to perfect your land, and how to literally start building within the regulatory environment. So that's the second thing. It needs to be clearer and a lot more a lot easier and a lot more transparent. And the third thing, lastly, is taxes. The tax system needs to be less punitive to development and more rewarding on development, because development creates jobs and therefore creates several other tax streams. So it just needs to allow the system to produce the properties, and that we'll see that growth. So those are the 3 key things I would say. There are other issues like the supply chain, which is evolving and getting better. People and skills, that's getting better as well. So those other areas are developing. Power, infrastructure. We know the common issues, but you can deal with those things. It's things outside your control that's a real problem.
Okay, and we know that your core business obviously is real estate, but you have other lines of businesses in Africa. Am I correct?
Well, yes, but they're all real estate focused. So we're one of those companies that does only one thing. We call it real estate. So whether it's the services part of real estate or the production part, producing properties there. So our line of business in Africa is a service business. So we had a serviced office business, which this time last year we sold to Regis, and we had that in 14 countries in Africa, and that we've sold. We have a property advisory business, which we still run. We call it Corporate Solutions, and that's in several countries in Africa. And then our real estate business, which more or less is in West Africa at this point in time.
Do you have huge plans to expand significantly outside Nigeria? Because you know that much of your business seems to be here in Nigeria, even though you have offices in South Africa, London, all across the world, you know.
Yes, we do, and we're looking at several opportunities across the continent. So Africa is somewhere we know. I said at the show before is we are very African. We're pitched towards Africa. We're represented by Africans, and we're a very African company. We work in African areas, and we know Africa because we've worked in 14 different African countries. We've created a business and sold a business in those countries. And right now we're literally domiciled in 5 of these African countries now, but in the 4 corners of Africa. And we do have big plans to develop across the 4 corners. Yes.
Paul Onwuanibe, the CEO of Landmark Africa, speaking to CNBC Africa's Didi Akinlore.